Hi everybody, Steve Stahlberg here with monthly painting video number 67, made in Kuala Lumpur, July 2019. This month it's a pin-up of two women making pottery together. The idea started with a garment called a dudo. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but it's a traditional apron from China which in more recent times has also become a sexy lingerie item for adults. It has this distinctive square shape, slanted at 45 degrees, covering only the front of the torso. So one corner is at the neck, at the top. One corner is down below at the crotch, and the other two corners, as you see here, would be kind of halfway wrapping around the waist. There'd be a string around the neck as well. But in my first sketch that you can see here, you can't see the front, so I didn't bother to follow through on that part of the idea. Even though later I turned the one on the left around so you can see the front, but instead I focused on the pottery aspect and the lighting. And here's a photo that I used as inspiration for the lighting. Coming in from the side, very bright sunlight coming in and bouncing around in the scene. You'll see that later, but very bright lighting like that is actually a lot of fun to do, because you start off with simple flat areas. You just select them, you select wherever the sunlight is going to end up, and then as you see here, this middle gray here is going to be the shadow basically. And so after that is really easy. You just sort of run your color dodge brush. If you plan to make the sunlight a little bluish, which I did in this case, because I wanted to have hot colors, warm colors in the shadow, so you'll see that also later. But so to contrast, I made the sun. I mean, I know normally sunlight is warm yellowish, but as it mixes with the skylight, which is blue, the sky is blue, especially if there's no clouds, and interior lighting usually looks warmer than exterior lighting. If you're seeing both of them in the same image and you compare them next to each other, you get this impression that the outdoor lighting is cooler than the indoor light. Anyway, so you take that slightly bluish tinted bright light color and use color dodge and run that over the edges, not in the shadow obviously, but in the lighted areas and a little bit over the edges of the lighted areas, and this will give you a nice bloom, a nice glow effect that looks very realistic as bright light. And you'll see that later also. But for now I'm sketching the drawing stage, and you can see here I turned one of them around about 90 degrees so we can see her face. It makes a better composition, and they can now be more looking at each other, and we can see one of their faces, which is much better. And so flattening in the basic shapes, or the basic outlines and shapes of the important parts of the image. In this case, these two characters are the most important thing in the image. And right now here I'm constructing the vase, and you can see these ellipses here. I got them a little bit wrong. I changed them later. You'll see that towards the end I'll be sort of flattening. I flattened these two out a bit. But this is how you do it. This is how you work with perspective. You use the ellipses that are available in Photoshop and make a drawing on one layer, and then on another layer you do what I did here, flattening in the silhouette by simply selecting along your drawing that you did. And here I'm just copying the same vase 2 or 3 times. And here I'm adding some ambient shadow, which is made much easier by the fact that I already had a middle gray here, and I just had to have just a slightly darker gray to put that shadow in there. And try to keep layers logical. Like in this case, I have the background is consisting of the back wall, and here I am mapping out the sunlight. But the back wall and the floor is on one layer, and that makes it easier to control it later with image processing filters, such as, or not filters, but like curves or hue brightness. You can do the entire background with one single sliding operation. Like when I say sliding, I mean you're sliding your mouse back and forth and sort of estimating. You're watching the screen and you're seeing it go darker, brighter, and then that's what I like to do. It's a very intuitive way to work. And so you have a girl on a layer, you can do that to the entire girl as well. Let's say you want to darken everything. It's very difficult to go around. I mean, some people would add another layer just for darkening the entire image, but to me it's much easier and much more intuitive to darken a piece by itself, like this silhouette of a character, but not now, not on this stage, of course. You wait. You do that last. Okay, you do that last. Here I have added the sunlight, hitting different parts, but just a flat single color. Right now there's only two colors, but now I'm adding a third. I'm adding the darkest parts of the shadow first, and then I am about to get a little bit more subtle with the shading here. Here comes the brownish, reddish, slightly darker, which gives you that warmer skin color that I was talking about earlier, making the sunlight. The sunlight here is basically pure white, but it's going to look kind of slightly cool when everything else here is slightly warmer than gray. So, and again, that can easily be tweaked. Like, she can be tweaked as a whole. That's why for a while the aprons are separate, right? So you can treat the aprons separately with image processing, but her skin, all her skin is on one single layer. And I could have put both these skin areas on the same layer, but actually that's not optimal, because she's in front of the vase and she's behind the vase. It's just easier to have girl 1 and girl 2. Yes, you can see here in this list, girl 1, girl 2, apron 1, apron 2, and one hair is here, I think, and another one hair is here. Later I merged some of these together, so you don't see this in the final file that much. But yeah, right now I'm shading the skin. And if you compare this here to the final image, you can bring it up next to this video if you want to compare. You can see what I mean about the image processing. I went through some tweaking of the curves and the hue, what is it, hue brightness, hue saturation brightness. Those two are my favorite ways to process the a layer after I've gotten to a certain stage with the shading. So obviously you wouldn't be doing it much before you have the full range. And when I'm painting, my problem, and I think other people's problems also similar, my problem is my range isn't big enough. So one thing I like to do, which I've talked about in other videos, is to go auto contrast on a layer and see what it looks like, and if it doesn't work at all, I erase it and go back. And if it does work, but it's a bit too strong, then I go to fade, which is under edit, fade. And there's another very intuitive way to work. Now I'm doing the glasses. I'm starting on the face with the glasses here. Glasses first on their own layer, so I can fiddle with them separately later. But the face, except for the hair, the face is on its own layer, which makes it much easier to go again in with curves or whatever. And this too, the warping thing, is very, very tricky to do that if you have a material separated in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 layers or whatever some people have, it's very difficult to go in. You'd have to collapse them, or you'd have to save another layer, which then means you can't go back and edit the other ones, because this would be a covering layer that covers everything on top, to be able to warp it. Warp, liquefy, skew, scale, all those wonderful transformation tools that I actually use quite a lot to, because you may have noticed a little jump there. Everything I paint and draw is pretty much like 99% of the time it looks awful for the first version of it. So you go back and you have to. It's not nothing to feel bad about. It's nothing to feel like you failed. You have to go back and pummel it. Warp, stretch, scale, rotate, whatever. Copy paste. Again and again and again. Even like half the nostril. Copy paste, move it sideways 1 millimeter. Stuff like that. I do that all the time, and that's very difficult to do unless you have that material. If it's gold, the gold surface, the skin surface, the clay surface, the apron surface, whatever the material is on one single layer. Now let's see, where are we? Checking my notes. That was the face, and now I'm adding shadows. Tweaking, detailing, subtlifying, refining shadows here on the apron. Cast shadows are sharp. These softer shadows are just the light reaching around something which has a round edge to it. This is cast by, I'm not sure, maybe the arm. The arm, it's just, I just wanted to have the effect of sharp and soft, because that is very important, I feel, here also, sharp and soft. It's a very nice contrast to have. Here again, sharp and soft. It's something nice to remember. Here again, sharp and soft. So now I'm detailing the clay. They both have clay on their hands, of course, and for a while I had the clay on a separate layer. Just makes it easier to work with. And then later I deleted like the hand, not all the way up to where the clay ends, but I left a little overlap at the wrist, but I deleted the hand just to make sure that there wasn't any funny business. Of if I'd missed a spot on the clay, there would be skin showing through. I could do that on purpose. I could show the skin through on purpose, but accidentally is it's a little bit tricky when you're working on a large image, and then if you happen to accidentally not zoom in enough, then you don't notice these until the end, and then it can be a lot of cleaning up to do after. Here I am fixing the perspective, as I was mentioned earlier, the ellipses. I already fixed them on the vase. Here I'm fixing them on the little mug of water, or they call it slip. It's a mix of water and clay that you use for different purposes, like for instance gluing handles onto something. I guess they have a water bucket somewhere as well too, because you got to keep dipping your hands in water while you're doing this. It's quite horrible when your hands dry out. The friction of this huge thing spinning, and it gets quite rough, and it gets hot. You destroy the vase and you burn your hands. So you got to keep dipping your hands in water all the time. But anyway, it's done. Let's see if I missed something in my notes here. There's the reddish glow I haven't talked too much about. You can see here there is more reddish glow here, which is bouncing from here. So the reason you get it as reddish as it is, well, maybe not in real life, I exaggerated quite a lot. And also along the terminator here, I exaggerated the warmness. That's the blood. This is the SSS, the subsurface effect happening here and also here. You can see I used that color dodge thing here and here and here, heating up the edge, heating up the terminator, warming the terminator. Just but this is different. This is bounce light, so this is not SSS. This is not SSS, this is SSS. So the reason that happens is when light bounces off a warm surface, it becomes twice as warm. This color here, it's the same thing when you're looking down inside a golden cup. You see light that's bouncing from one side of the cup to the other side of the cup, and it becomes like doubly golden, like it's 2 times as orangey as gold normally is, because it's catching the color twice, if you know what I mean. You can have a look. If you have a golden ring or something, you can look inside. But anyway, yeah, and I tried to make the sunlight look a little bit bluish. You can see that here. This is another instance of color dodge here, and a little bit on the vase as well, and here, you know, hot spots on the hair, and a little bit of extra sort of airbrushing white here and bounce light here and stuff. And on the mug, yes, quite a lot. You can see a strong blue color right there on the mug. I think that's it. Yep. So hope you like it. Let me know if you have any feedback or questions. Yeah, thanks for your support, and see you next month.